Howdy folks, welcome back to part 2 of my patch 8.6 test server artillery preview. In the first part of this video we had a look at scouting for the new artillery and a quick look at this little thing, the tier 9 French artillery, the Batchat 15555, which to all intents and purposes is the same as the tier 10 French artillery, the Batchat 15558, which we all know and love in-game as the current tier 8 French artillery. It's pretty much exactly the same machine. It's got the turret, it's got the mobility, but it doesn't have the autoloader. Enough of the French. Let's have a look at the Americans. This is the American tier 9, the M55, M53, M55. It's a kind of weird looking thing. It almost looks as if the turret's on backwards. That looks like the back end of most tanks. And weird tracking configuration, but you know, it is what it is. Now, don't be deceived into thinking this is a turret, right? It almost is, but it isn't. It's a lot like the GW Panther, the Schutzwagen Panther. It will turn a large amount to the left and right, but it's not a proper turret. But, you know, that's a good thing. Very, very, very good gun traverse. It's pretty fast as well. This thing will do 56.3 kph. It takes some time to get up to that speed, but this thing can shift, which is a radical departure for American artillery, certainly high-tier American artillery. So I can see this thing being very, very, very popular. Now, it's got a choice of 2 guns. And there they are. The first gun, this is the stock gun, and it's not bad, you know. The 155mm M46. The rate of fire is comparable to the French tier 9. In fact, it might even be a fraction faster. The aiming time is pretty damn good by artillery standards, 6 seconds. The penetration, well, you know, it's artillery. And this is kind of weird. If you look at the ammo choices for this gun, that's actually mounted on the machine. It's 2 different choices of high explosive, one for gold and one not. Now, the American artillery is, well, the thing about American artillery has always been the splash damage. American artillery was always inaccurate, but had monster splash damage, the T-92 being the most famous example. And this thing's kind of not with this gun. What we've got here is 2 choices of high explosive ammo, the first one only having just under 4 meters splash radius, and the premium one, which isn't high explosive anti-tank, it's just premium high explosive, only has just over 5.34. So what you've got with this thing is almost an American carbon copy of that. Let's compare the guns. The American gun has a faster rate of fire, similar penetration, same damage, it's more accurate, and it doesn't have as good an aiming time. It's half a second slower aiming time. So that's what you get with the M53 if you opt to use the stock gun. And the stock gun isn't bad. That was a good gun on the Batchat 55. It's not a terrible gun at all on the M53, but it's nothing like any of the other American artillery guns. Now, if you decide to go for the 8-inch, and if you look at the tech tree, you're going to have to go for the 8-inch if you want to get to the T-92. The 8-inch is a completely different kettle of fish. That thing is a 203mm howitzer. It's a big gun. Look at the size of that. And the stats reflect it. Very slow rate of fire, 1.33 rounds per minute. Aiming time goes up. It's now 7 seconds, so that's not good. Accuracy suffers, but your penetration and your damage goes through the roof. If we were to look at the different ammo choices for this machine, you've got 6 meter splash damage. That's American, all right. 6 meters of splash damage on your standard credit ammo. Then you have your armor-piercing ammo, which does monstrous amounts of damage, and has, how much? 241mm of penetration, but does no splash damage. You need direct hits with this thing. And then you've got your premium ammo, which is premium HE. Look at the splash radius on that. 8.5 meters. Oh my lord! Yeah, that is American ammunition, artillery, definitely, no question about it. With a splash radius like that, that is absurdly good. So, what you've got here is a sort of hybrid. It depends entirely on what gun you fit to it. You can have the stock gun, the 155mm, which turns this into a Batchat 155, to all intents and purposes. Or you can go for the traditional American route and put the 8-inch howitzer on it and just hit multiple targets with your splash radius. So there you go. That's the M53, M55. Let's have a run out and see how it performs. Right then, the M53, M55. America! Back on Sand River, one of my favourite maps. And this thing can do up to, I think it was 56 kph. Let's put that to the test. Well, it doesn't have any problem reaching its cruising speed of anything between 30 and 40 kph, that's for sure. You can see the extent of the traverse there. So it's not a turret, but it's a lot like the GW Panther. And the GW Panther was a great artillery piece. And yeah, I really have no idea where artillery hides on this map. So I'm kind of learning from scratch here as we play. But plenty of time, we haven't spotted anything other than that T62A so far, so yeah, this should do, I think. Right, there we go, target's up. Let's see what we can hit. So this is the using the 8-inch gun. Come on, Mr. T57. Stay still. Stay still for your Uncle Jingles.
That was close.
Didn't quite give it enough lead. Still hit him though with the splash damage. Oh, if only I'd... Oh, Object 263s. Open top vehicles. They take full damage from artillery almost every time you hit them. I so should have taken that shot instead. Oh, hello. Hello, Mr. T95, sitting on a ridgeline. Come on, reload this gun. Reload this damn gun. 1700 health. Okay. Okay, just give me a minute. Oh, he's gone. Okay, readjust my aim. Take the shot anyway. That one went straight in. That one splashed the Yag Tiger as well. There you go. 1500 damage. And I splashed the Yag Tiger, who I didn't even know was there. Oh, I feel so dirty. I'm going to have to shower after playing this thing. That T95 is not having a very good day. But seriously, who sits on top of a ridgeline like that when there's a tier 9 and a tier 10 artillery playing? Okay, I'm loaded, but that T57, I thought he was aiming right at me, but he can't actually see me. And he's actually, and the T62 are both in pretty good spots. There's not much of them poking up, and even fully aimed. Watch. This is going to sail right over his turret. I remember this shot. Wait for him to move up. Clearly I don't remember that shot as well as I thought I remembered it. Switch my aim. Aim, aim, aim. Somebody else kills him. I know there's an FV215B up there, but I'm switching back to this T57 Heavy. And he is mostly hull down here. But I don't really have much of a chance of hitting him. T62A is dead though. So wait for it to aim, wait for it to aim. Sails right over his turret. And I am finding it's the aiming time that is the limiting factor when you're playing artillery, more than anything else. Because you can spot the target, or somebody else can spot the target, you can adjust your fire, and it takes so long to get the gun aimed in on him that he's either moved, disappears, or somebody else has hit him and killed him before you can reliably adjust your fire. Like, yeah, Object 261. Come on, reload, reload. Reloaded, and somebody else kills him. Same again. Switch my fire. There is no way I'm going to drop a shot on this fella before somebody else in a medium or a heavy tank does. So I have... you can see XVM up there saying I've only done 243 damage. XVM will only record visible damage. If you take a blind shot, or if you fire and then the target disappears after your shells left the barrel, it can't record it.
That was close.
So the oh, there's a bit of splash damage there on the pattern. Blew his tracks off, kept him in place, and Arty 110E3 finished him off. So we'll have a look at the post-battle results screen and see how much damage I actually did in that game. One thing I forgot to mention, actually, which I mentioned at the start of the video, but then forgot to explain, new bugs that have crept in the second version of the test patch. In the first version of the test patch, I was very, very happy to show you these little, next to the tanks that you've killed, all these little icons here. You could mouse over them and it gives you much, much more detailed information about exactly what critical damage you did, and so on and so on and so on. Well, they managed to break that. It doesn't work anymore in the second version of the test patch, but that's definitely something that's going to be fixed. They'll probably do a third version of the test patch and fix it, test it, make sure it works, and then 8.6 will go live. So don't worry too much about that. If you're on the test server at the moment and you're trying to find out where the information in the tooltips has gone, don't worry about it. It will be fixed. Another average position on the team, just above the middle, slightly better than average, 2,000 damage done, but some stiff competition from the rest of the team there. A lot of people did a lot of damage. 4 shots fired, only 1 direct hit, but that was a lovely direct hit on that T95 for 1,500 damage. The rest of it was just minor splash damage. But a couple of interesting points to note. One, even resupplying premium consumables, and that cost 20,000 credits, even with that, I still made a profit on that game. And I still made a profit on that game because, look down there, spotting damage. Almost 2,000 spotting damage done. How the hell did I get spotting damage in that game as artillery? Camped at the back of the... just does not compute. What I think is going on here is, don't forget there's a new mechanic here in 8.6, which counts as spotting damage. It's when you immobilize a target, when you blow somebody's tracks off, you get 25%, not the full 50% that you get for regular spotting damage, but you get 25% of the credits and XP that everybody else gets when they pummel that target after you've blown their tracks off. And I blew the tracks off a couple of tanks here, and they got pummeled, absolutely obliterated after that happened. So that's a new feature, because you know what artillery splash damage loves doing? It loves blowing your tracks off. So you're going to see artillery are going to start making a lot of money from those near misses that not only ruin tankers' lives by killing their drivers and killing their radio operator and knocking their ammo rack out and blowing the tracks off, but from assists, if you like, from the rest of the team taking advantage of the fact that you've immobilized the target. So more misery ahead for tank drivers. Anyway, enough of the Americans. Let's drop it down a couple of ranks and shift over to the Russians at Tier 7. This is one of the new Russian kids on the block, the Su-14-1, which is one tier below the Tier 8 Su-14-2, which is the Su-14 that we all know and love. Down here at Tier 7 you have this thing, which is pretty much exactly the same. In fact, this is sort of a hybrid, if you like, between the S-51 and the Su-14. It's got the Su-14 hull, but it's got the same open superstructure as the S-51. And the reason I keep mentioning the S-51 is, well, I'll show you what I mean. If you look at the tech tree. So, there's the Russian tech tree. There's the Su-14-1, and there's the S-51. They're both Tier 7 Russian artillery. Now, to get to the S-51, you have to go via the KV-2. It's the alternative route into the Russian artillery line, with the Su-14 being following the more traditional path, grinding up through the Su-18, Su-26, etc., etc. They both lead to the Tier 8 Su-14-2, which is the Su-14 that is currently in the game. And this is where I kind of have a problem with the Su-14-1, because if you pull up the vehicle details and compare it to the S51, they're practically the same machine. Whereas the SU14 one, and bear in mind we're looking at stock stats here for the S51 because I don't have one, and upgraded stats for the SU14 because I have one, but they've got the same speed. The SU14 turns slower than the S51, the same hit points. The gun traverse is the same, the view range is the same, the signal range will be the same if I had an upgraded engine fitted to the S51 and I actually had one. The same tank. Now the guns aren't exactly the same. The S51 gets a better selection of guns. Here's the SU14 one, and it gets, this is an upgrade obviously, 203mm howitzer, which the S51 also gets, as you can see there. This is the first upgrade, 152mm excuse me, artillery piece, which the S51 also gets. But what the S51 doesn't get is this crappy stock 152mm howitzer. So your S51 gets that gun and that gun, but it doesn't have to use this gun. If you actually go to the S51 and look, you'll see that the first upgrade gun on the SU14-1 is the stock gun on the S51. So it's a marginally better machine just by raw stats. Let's have a look at the engine. There you go, 600 horsepower engine. Okay, the SU14-1 does have slightly more power to weight. But unless we're talking about French artillery, nobody cares about the power to weight ratio of an artillery piece. It's all about the guns, and you do not have to suffer through grinding out that crappy 152mm howitzer that the SU14 has, because the first upgrade that you get on the SU14 is the stock gun on the S51. So that's a bit of a kick in the teeth for artillery players who have, you know, done it properly by going down the artillery line. This thing is a bit of a lemon. On the other hand, if you have a KV2 and you're interested in artillery, yeah, happy days. There you go, S51, that way. It will cost you 93,000 XP to get to the S51 and the SU14-2 at tier 8 via the KV2. So that's a lot of XP, 93,000. Alternatively, going from the SU8 to the SU14 is only 62,000 XP, so there is that. But if you've got the KV2 and it's elite and you've got nothing better to do with it, then hell, why not? So, the SU14-1. Well, let's have a look at the guns. So you've got this 100... I mean, we're not going to look at the stock gun because it's garbage. Choice of two. You've got a howitzer and you've got an artillery piece. And as you'd expect, the rate of fire on the howitzer is horrendous. It's almost one shot per minute. It is really, really slow to load. But it has decent penetration for a howitzer. 102mm with standard ammo isn't bad, and a lot of damage. So there's that. The accuracy, of course, is absolutely horrific, and it has a monstrous 8-second aiming time. That's really, really bad. Now, that's a howitzer, though. Don't forget that in patch 8.6, howitzer flight time, if you like, the length of time it takes the shot to leave the barrel and hit the target, is going up by 50%. So that's something you're going to have to get used to when you're using a howitzer. The flight time of standard artillery shells is also going up, but only between 10 and 15%. So 50% increased shell time in the air for these things. 10 to 15% increased shell time in the air for these things. And this isn't a bad gun. I mean, technically it's a tier 7 gun, and that's a tier 9 gun. But don't be deceived into thinking that is definitely the gun to go for. I do think that's a better gun, but this isn't bad. It's a lot more accurate, 0.76. The aiming time is a whole second faster, and that really does make a difference with high tier artillery. The aiming time is the limiting factor. Penetration and damage, nowhere near as much as on the 203mm gun. But a lot of the time with artillery, it's going to come down to ammunition choice. So let's have a look and see what you get. So with a 152mm long-barreled artillery piece, you get a choice of 3 different ammunition. But the interesting thing is, only one of them is bought with credits, and that's the standard high explosive ammunition, which only has a 3.6 meter splash range. Doesn't do a huge amount of damage, doesn't have very good penetration. It's just not very good. 2 different choices of premium ammo, and it'll cost you 4,800 credits a shot for this stuff, and 5,200 credits a shot for that stuff, or 12 gold and 13 gold. And this stuff is armor piercing, so it has no splash radius. If you don't score a direct hit, you don't kill anything. And it has 246mm of penetration. So that's interesting. And don't forget, if it penetrates, and it probably will because it has 246mm of penetration, you're going to do the full damage. This is the equivalent of being hit by a tier 10 tank destroyer, or some of the tier 9s, T-30, Object 704. So there's that. And the other gold ammo is high explosive. And there's the difference right there. It's the splash radius. With the standard ammo, it only has 3.6 meters splash radius. The gold high explosive, 5.1 meters. That's pretty respectable for what is only a tier 7 artillery piece. So those are your choices with the 152mm gun. The 203mm howitzer, on the other hand. Here we go. So there's your credit ammo. Well, there's 2 different kinds of credit ammo. It's got armor piercing and high explosive credit ammo. Holy cow, look at the splash radius of the credit ammo HE. 6 meters. Lots of damage. Unlikely to penetrate and do the full damage, however. Or you can go for the armor piercing, and the armor piercing has 260mm of penetration. Wow. And don't forget, if you're going to do any damage with the armor piercing ammo, you have to penetrate. But if you penetrate, you're going to do 1,500 damage to all intents and purposes. So that's an interesting choice. Your third choice of ammo, which will set you back 8,000 credits per shot, or 20 gold, is this stuff, 203mm HE. Look at the splash radius on that. You could miss your target by half a mile and still kill him. I exaggerate, but you know what I mean. Again, penetration is garbage because it's HE. Well, it's not that bad, you know. It's 102mm with credit and premium high explosive ammo. And up to 1850. Well, not up to. You can have over 1850. 1850 average damage. But with this ammo, it's all about that monster splash radius. Practically turns this thing into an American. So those are your choices on the SU-14-1. Let's see how it plays. Well, this was a bit of a treat. I'm in the SU-14-1, and it's the new map. Using the 203mm howitzer, because I just could not make that 152mm gun work. So, new map. 3 artillery myself and a pair of Geschutzwagen Panthers. They've got an M53, M55 and a GW Panther. And that's it. So we got the artillery advantage. But I have absolutely no idea where to go. Haven't got a clue. This is the encounter mode of this new map, by the way. You can see the flag there for both teams. And the enemy team starting pretty much directly across the valley in front of us. Right over that way. That's where the enemy team are coming from. So, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? GW Panther catching some airtime as he goes over the ridge there. I figure there's a spot here. Because this ain't the fastest machine in the game. You can't spend too long getting in position. See what this map's like. This is one of those maps. I mean, there's lots and lots and lots of concealment on this map, but very little substantial cover. And most of the cover that... well, actually, that's not true. There's lots of concealment and there's lots of cover. But most of the cover is destructible. In fact, almost all of the cover is constructible. Constructible? Destructible. Oh, an Object 704. There. And you see how I only turned the gun a small amount and bang, straight through that whole aiming cycle all over again. Shot away. Decent amount of damage. It's nearly 600 damage to the Object 704, so that's a useful kill. There's one of their Tier 9 tank destroyers. Gone. But they've got plenty more of those where they came from. Now this STI is in a good spot. He's actually hull down over that ridge. And I don't have a shot at him. So I think the trick, especially with artillery like the Su-14-1 that has such a narrow gun traverse, is to use your aiming time wisely. And it's going to come down to knowing the map and predicting where the enemy team are likely to pop up. Because if you're aimed in the wrong spot, I mean, and I can't hit that IS. Maybe I can splash him. No. Oh, Arty spotted. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Arty spotted, and, well, our FCM-50T got around and nailed him. But generally speaking, if a scout gets through and spots artillery, it's usually your job as artillery to do counter-battery fire and kill him. But if you're aimed somewhere else in this thing, and this is something that a lot of people don't understand, they think, God damn it, Arty, I spotted that tank for ages and you didn't kill him. Well, you can see how long it takes me to adjust my aim. Oh, somebody hit that guy. Of course, I fire and it misses. But yeah, you can see how long it takes for artillery to adjust their aim. Not so much the French. Not so much machines like the GW Panther. But this thing, yeah, definitely. Oh, T95. I'm still halfway through my aiming cycle. Sorry, halfway through loading, and he's dead. And this is the problem with artillery, with playing artillery. Certainly on this machine. And it's a combination of a very, very, very slow reload, horrendous aiming time, and a very, very narrow gun traverse. Now, any two of those factors on an SPG, you can usually learn to live with. Oh, watch this. I've loaded premium.
We just dinged up.
That's the armor-piercing ammo on this thing, which allegedly has 260mm of penetration. That should have one-shotted the IS-6, but no, no, no. Oh, God almighty. No way. So now I've got to go through the whole 38-second reload again and try to predict where I'm going to be able to put this thing to use so that I'm fully aimed when the thing's reloaded. But so frustrating. And I don't know. Just as I'm loaded, he just, yeah, forget it. All they have left now, wouldn't this be ironic? All they have now is a T-54E1 and a T-54. And wouldn't it just be ironic if these guys killed me now? No, that was... See, I was not paying attention there. Did not I was about to try to get a direct fire shot at that T-54. Did not realise that GW Panther was sitting right in front of me. I need to be careful here because that is a destructible building. If I nose into it, that's my cover gone. I will be a dead scumbag. But I needn't have worried. E75 nails the T-54. And it's game over. Hey, finally I get a kill and I did some substantial damage. Although I did a good hit on that Object 704, but that hit on the Object 704 and that final killing shot on the T-54E1 were pretty much my only contribution in that game. So I've definitely been struggling to get to grips with the Su-14-1. Not so much the Batchat 155-55, not so much the M53, M55. But this thing, yeah. And I think it's down to, well, it's down to the gun traverse. Pure and simple. because this thing has such a narrow firing arc and such a long aiming time, it does. There you go. You see that? How little that's cost me. That's cost me right there. You see, I was aimed in, and then I adjusted my sights just a slight amount, and bang, had to go right through the whole aiming circle again. Aiming circle? Sorry, aiming cycle. But that's what I'm talking about right there. Look at that. That's the upside of having a big howitzer like this. That was one shot fired, 2 targets hit, 1400 damage. Spotting tanks in that sort of position is an absolute gift to artillery firing howitzers with big splash radius and large amounts of alpha damage. Oh, but once again, threat on the other flank. I'm loaded, but I'm not even close to being aimed. And this is the limiting factor. Definitely, right here. And fire. Good shot. That was actually a pretty good shot. Well done, Jingles. Looks like you're getting the hang of this after all. So there's almost 2,000 damage done in 2 shots. But that was because hitting multiple targets with the splash damage. Oh, that was a good. No, they don't need my help with that tortoise. But this T95, on the other hand, still got half of my aiming loading cycle to go through, and oh, I could have been able to devastate this T30 if I'd just been loaded. And of course now I have to try to predict where I'm going to be loaded and start trying to pre-aim at it. It's a bit of a cheap shot finishing off this Panther 2. Should I? No. He's moving too quickly. Somebody else killed him. Wasted the shot. I should have gone for the T30. But, you know, could have, should have, would have, didn't. And there he is. E75 finishes him. I find it's definitely the case, more so in artillery than any other machine. And we're getting our arse kicked here, by the way. We're losing 3-9, despite my best efforts. More than in any other machine, it's all about choosing your shots with care. Those of us who are used to blazing around the place, oh, somebody just went over the hill, take a shot, it dropped short, there's no way that hit whoever it was. Which perfectly illustrates my point. Those of us who are used to zipping around the maps in our light tanks and fast mediums and just blazing away, British tank drivers in particular with those rapid firing 75 and 76mm guns, driving artillery is going to come as a real culture shock to you, because it just does not work that way. There are very, very few circumstances in which you can justify taking speculative fire with artillery. Oh, and that T-29 is pointing his gun right at me. Take the shot, missed him, and then died. So, yeah, that was a horrible, horrible, horrible game. But I did okay. I mean, I could have done better, definitely. There was a couple of shots I should never have taken, a couple of targets I should never have fired at, and it cost me. But I don't think the Su-14-1 is a terrible machine, but it's definitely not very good. And not a particularly good performance from me either. Look at that. 2,000 damage done, second placed. It's not great. Only the one direct hit on the Foch. Most of the damage I did in the game was from the very first shot that hit those 2 tanks clustered close together and set the Panther 2 on fire. However, and again, I made a loss on that, but I was running premium consumables across the board. Got set on fire when the T-29 hit me. Used the premium fire extinguisher. 35,000 credits it's cost me to resupply just the consumables in that game. If not for that, that would have still been a profit. So there's that. So there you go. I have abandoned all self-respect and played some artillery on the test server just for you, my loyal minions. I definitely think that the major limiting factor in artillery is the aiming time of the guns. So many times, I mean, you never take snapshots with high-tier artillery. You just don't do it. And it's the gun traverse. The gun traverse and the aiming time is what makes things like this and that really, really good. And what cripples things like that. Because it has such a narrow firing arc with the gun. And then the second you have to turn the hull in order to bring the gun round on the target, you've got to go through that whole monster 8-second aiming time again. And in that time, either the target has disappeared, somebody else has killed him, or he's moved into cover. And that... I'm obviously preaching to the choir here. Existing artillery players already know exactly what I'm talking about, but I had to relearn this because aside from 3 games on the Su-26, which is only tier 3, I don't think I've played artillery in 6 months. And so yeah, I had to go through the whole learning process of how to drive these things again on the test server. And it's not difficult. It really isn't, as long as you obey a few simple rules. And it all comes down to aiming time and knowing how much gun traverse you have and setting yourself up in a position where you can quickly bring the gun to bear on a target without having to turn the hull. And that's half the skill of playing artillery successfully, as in my experience anyway. So there you go. Some of the new artillery on the 8.6 test server and some footage of a game on the new map. And just before we go, as an added bonus, because I completely forgot to mention this in my previous 8.6 test server videos. There you go, the new Russian camo, or one of the new Russian camos. This is the reason I haven't painted my IS-7, because I really like the look of that. Anyway folks, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Take care on that battlefield, and I'll catch you next time.